She only had half a sandwich, but it was enough to save a life. A little black girl stopped in front of a bakery and changed the billionaire's life forever. She didn't know the boy she fed was lost, broken, and worth millions. All she saw was hunger. What she gave him wasn't just food, it was hope. The bakery windows shimmered under the afternoon sun. Glass panes fogged slightly from the warmth of fresh pastries cooling inside. Outside, on the cracked sidewalk, a little boy stood motionless. His fingers were pressed against the glass as though touch alone could taste the sweetness beyond it. His small shoulders trembled, not from cold, but from something deeper, the kind of hunger that went beyond food. He looked no older than 4, his pale skin marked with streaks of dust, his blonde hair matted in soft curls that caught the light like faded gold. His lips were dry, his eyes tired and wide, the kind that seemed more road than rest. From across the street, Nyla Carter watched .8 years old, her dark braids glinting with tiny silver beads her grandmother had woven the night before. She carried a small brown lunch bag, the one she always saved until the park after school. But today, her steps slowed as she saw him. She crossed the street cautious, but kind, the way her grandma always said a good heart should move, with care, not fear. "Hey," she said softly, standing a few steps away. "You hungry?" The boy didn't answer. He just stared harder at the rows of cherry danishes and cinnamon rolls. Nyla followed his gaze, then looked down at her paper bag. Inside, her sandwich, peanut butter and honey on soft white bread, a small apple, and a cookie wrapped in wax paper. IT wasn't much, but to him, it was everything. Without a word, she sat beside him on the curb, unwrapped the sandwich, and broke it in half. "You can have this," she said. Her voice wasn't pity. It was warmth. Simple, certain kindness. For a moment, the boy hesitated. Then slowly, his tiny fingers reached for the half she held out. He took one bite, then another. His breathing steadied. His eyes softened. Nyla smiled faintly. "Don't talk much to us," she whispered. "That's okay, and why Grandma says quiet people hear more." For the first time, the boy looked at her. Just a glance. But in that moment, the world seemed to pause. A fragile connection had formed between two children who didn't belong to the same world, but somehow shared the same silence. She decided to give him a name. "I'll call you Rain," she said gently, "'cause your eyes look like the sky right before it starts." She didn't know that someone across the street, a woman in a blue coat, was already pulling out her phone, whispering into it. "I think I found him. The missing boy. The billionaire's son. He's sitting with a little girl outside the bakery." 5 minutes later, a quiet police car rolled up to the curb. The boy froze, his body tense like a frightened animal. He grabbed Nyla's arm. "It's okay," she said quickly, her small voice trembling but brave. "They just want to help." The officers moved slowly, speaking softly. They recognized the child instantly, the one plastered on news reports for weeks. They offered him cocoa and a blanket, but he wouldn't move until Nyla whispered, "I'll go with you." That's when he finally stood. Inside the station, fluorescent lights buzzed above like tired bees. The boy, Rain, sat beside Nyla on a long wooden bench. Still clutching her hand, he hadn't let go since they arrived. The officers whispered among themselves, the radio humming in the background, and one of them called upstairs, across the city, in a high-rise office overlooking Atlanta's skyline. Sebastian Hale dropped his phone when the alert appeared. Missing child found safe. Hale air discovered with unidentified girl. His son's face appeared on screen, sitting beside a small black girl, holding a sandwich. Smiling faintly, Sebastian's knees went weak. It had been 10 months since the car accident that stole his wife and silenced his boy. Since then, Rain hadn't spoken a single word, and no laughter, no sound, just silence and grief. And now a smile. "Get the car," Sebastian ordered, his voice breaking point 30 minutes later. The police station doors swung open. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Sebastian Hale stepped inside. Tall, weary, wrapped in an expensive black coat that couldn't hide how hollow he looked. "Where's my son?" he asked. The officer pointed toward the bench. There, curled in a blanket too big for him, sat Rain, and beside him Nyla. She was humming quietly, the same tune she'd used to calm him outside the bakery. Sebastian froze. For months he had tried to reach his son with therapists, teachers, toys. Nothing worked. But now, this small girl had done what money could not. When Rain looked up and saw him, his lip quivered. Then, for the first time since the funeral, he whispered one word, "Daddy." Sebastian dropped to his knees. The sound was raw, cracked. Wholly he pulled his son into his arms, tears streaming freely. When he finally looked up at Nyla, she was sitting very still, holding her half-empty paper bag in her lap. "You stayed with him?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "He was hungry, and he looked sad. I didn't want him to be alone." Sebastian's throat tightened. "Why?" She looked down. "Because I know what alone feels like." Outside, the news cameras were already gathering. But inside, under the hum of the station lights, something unseen had begun. A small act of kindness unraveling grief. A miracle so ordinary that no one quite knew how to explain it. When Nyla's grandmother, Evelyn Carter, arrived, scarf half-tied, coat buttons mismatched, she rushed her granddaughter, tears in her eyes. "Baby, are you all right?" "I'm okay," Nyla whispered. "He's my friend." Evelyn turned sharply to Sebastian, defensive. "She didn't do nothing wrong, sir. She saw a child in need and helped." Sebastian shook his head. "I know," he said softly, "and I'll spend the rest of my life thanking her for it." He turned to the officers. "Please, let them come with you, as M.Y.'s son only feels safe when she's near." Evelyn hesitated. "Go with him where?" "To my home," he said. "Or anywhere you feel safe, but please don't take her away from him yet." Evelyn sighed, then looked at Nyla. The girl met her grandmother's eyes with quiet certainty. "He's still sad," she said. "I can help him feel less sad." Evelyn nodded slowly. "All right, just for a little while." That night, a sleek black car pulled away from the police station. Inside, a billionaire's broken world beginning to heal, held together by the small hand of a child who refused to walk away. Under the fading amber lights of evening, the black car rolled silently through the city until it reached the towering gates of the Hale estate, a mansion so vast it seemed to swallow the night itself. And as the iron gates opened, Nyla pressed her small hand against the cool glass, staring at the endless driveway lined with lights that shimmered like fallen stars. Beside her, Rain leaned quietly against his father's chest, clutching the old teddy bear an officer had given him at the station. Evelyn Carter sat stiffly, holding her purse tight, her eyes wide with disbelief at the grandeur surrounding them. When the car stopped, the driver hurried open the doors, and warmth rushed out, a perfume of cedarwood, polished marble, and faint lavender. The grand foyer was unlike anything Nyla had ever seen. Golden chandeliers, high arches, and staircases that curved like ribbons toward the sky. "Is this a hotel?" she asked softly. Sebastian smiled faintly for the first time in months. "No, sweetheart, just home." But home had not felt like home for a long time. The house had been filled with silence since Rain's mother died, a silence so thick it choked the air, until this little girl arrived with her brown paper bag and steady courage. As they entered, a woman in a crisp uniform appeared, startled at the sight of the billionaire, carrying a child and accompanied by strangers. "Prepare the East Wing," Sebastian instructed gently, "and ask Dr. Morgan to stop by tonight." The woman nodded and hurried away. Evelyn frowned, clutching Nyla's shoulder protectively. "You sure about this, baby?" she whispered. "He looks kind, but rich folks play by rules we don't know." Nyla looked up, her voice soft but certain. "He's not pretending, Grandma. He just looks sad." Upstairs, Rain refused to let go of her hand. Every time she stepped a few inches away, his breath caught. Every time she smiled at him, his eyes followed as if light itself lived behind her face. Later that night, after Evelyn and Nyla were shown to a guest room more beautiful than anything they had imagined, a bed that felt like clouds, soft pajamas folded neatly by the side, and a tray of warm food waiting by the window, Nyla could barely speak. "Is this real?" she whispered. Evelyn, sitting on the edge of the bed, looked around cautiously. "Feels like somebody else's dream," she said. When Nyla finished her dinner, she tiptoed out of the room, barefoot, teddy bear in hand, following the faint glow spilling from the den. There, by the fireplace, Sebastian sat with Rain asleep in his arms, his face softened by the firelight, eyes red but peaceful. Nyla stood by the doorway. "Is he okay?" she asked. Sebastian looked up, startled, then smiled wearily. "He is when you're near." She walked closer and gently placed the teddy bear beside the boy. "His name's Mr. Cloudy," she said quietly. He helps me sleep when I miss my mama. Sebastian's throat tightened. He watched as Rain instinctively pulled the bear close, exhaling a soft sigh that sounded almost like peace. For the first time in months, the heavy air in the house felt lighter. "Nyla," Sebastian whispered, his voice trembling, "I don't know what you've done, but I think you're saving us." She didn't answer, only sat cross-legged on the carpet and began to hum that same little tune she'd hummed outside the bakery. The fire flickered. Rain stirred, then smiled in his sleep. The house, long haunted by grief, finally breathed again. Upstairs, Evelyn whispered a quiet prayer of thanks, unaware that downstairs, a story of healing had begun. Two worlds stitched together by the hands of a child who gave half her sandwich and her whole heart. Morning sunlight spilled gently across the vast halls of the Hale estate, soft and golden, catching the dust motes that danced through the air like tiny pieces of grace. The world outside was quiet, wrapped in the stillness of early dawn, and for the first time in many months, peace had settled over the mansion like a fragile miracle. In the guest room, Nyla stirred beneath blankets softer than clouds, her braids tousled and her teddy bear missing from her arms. Panic fluttered through her chest until memory returned. She had given Mr. Cloudy to Rain. Smiling, she slipped out of bed and padded toward the window. Beyond the glass stretched acres of manicured garden, glowing in the morning sun. "Morning, baby," came Evelyn's voice from the armchair near the window, a cup of tea steaming beside her Bible. "Sleep good." Nyla nodded, rubbing her eyes. "Best sleep ever. The bed swallowed me like a marshmallow." Evelyn chuckled softly. "You earned it, sweetheart. You did something mighty special yesterday." Nyla shrugged. "I just share my sandwich." "Sometimes the smallest kindnesses move mountains," Evelyn said, closing her Bible with a thoughtful sigh. A soft knock came at the door, and a kind-faced housekeeper appeared. Mr. Hale asked if Nyla would like to join him and Rain in the garden for breakfast, she said. Nyla's eyes lit up. "Can I, Grandma?" Evelyn nodded but warned gently. "Mind your manners, eat slow, and stay where folks can see you." Moments later, Nyla followed the housekeeper down endless hallways that seemed to glow with quiet light. Everything felt too big, too perfect, but her steps were sure. In the garden, Sebastian sat at a wrought iron table beneath a blooming magnolia tree, the air thick with sweet scent. Rain sat beside him, his legs swinging above the ground, dressed in clean jeans and a soft gray sweater. When he saw Nyla, his face brightened instantly, a small but radiant smile stretching across his face. "Morning, Rain," she said, sliding into the chair beside him. He didn't speak, only reached beneath the table and lifted Mr. Cloudy for her to see. She laughed. "You took good care of him." Sebastian watched silently, his heart trembling in a way he hadn't felt in years. He had faced boardrooms filled with power, reporters hungry for headlines, but nothing had ever shaken him like the sight of these two children, a daughter of struggle and son of privilege, bridging grief with grace. Breakfast arrived. Scrambled eggs, fresh strawberries, warm toast, and honey. Nyla chatted softly while Rain listened, eating more than he had in months. She told him stories about her grandma's garden, about rescuing a three-legged cat, about how her school playground had a swing that squeaked like it was complaining. Rain giggled quietly twice, and Sebastian nearly dropped his fork. Then, as Nyla was telling a story about a bird that once stole her sandwich, Rain whispered something so soft Sebastian thought he'd imagined it. "More." Nyla froze, her eyes wide. "You spoke," she whispered. Sebastian's hands trembled, his coffee cup rattling against the saucer. "Rain, what did you say?" The boy looked at his father, then at Nyla and whispered again, "More story." It was small and perfect, but real, a child's voice breaking through months of silence. Tears filled Sebastian's eyes, spilling down his face as he knelt beside his son. "You did it, buddy," he said shakily. "You found your voice." Rain reached for Nyla's hand, as if to share the moment. "See," she said with a soft grin. "Told you quiet people hear more." The three of them sat beneath the magnolia tree as sunlight danced across the table, and for the first time in a long while, the Hale estate echoed not with grief, but with laughter. Evelyn joined them soon after, her expression cautious, yet softened when she saw the boy smile. "Seems your little miracle's working," she murmured. Sebastian looked up at her, voice rough with emotion. "You and your granddaughter have given me back my son." Evelyn shook her head gently. "No, Mr. Hale. That child of yours just needed a little light, and my Nyla's got plenty to spare." By the time the plates were cleared, the air around the table had changed, lighter, warmer, alive. As Rain played quietly with a daisy chain Nyla had made him, Sebastian spoke again, voice trembling with sincerity. "I want to do something for you both, for her especially." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "You don't owe us a thing." "Maybe not," he said, "but gratitude like this shouldn't stay silent. I want to give her every chance, education, music, art, whatever she dreams of. And you'll never have to worry about bills or rent again." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "You trying to play savior, Mr. Hale?" "No, ma'am," he said quickly, shaking his head. "I'm trying to say thank you in the only way I know how. Your granddaughter didn't just feed my boy. She reminded me what love looks like when it asks for nothing in return." Evelyn studied him for a long moment before her lips curved into a slow smile. "Then don't start with money," she said. "Start by understanding where we come from. You want to thank us? Come see how we live." Sebastian nodded solemnly. "Deal." Later that evening, as dusk painted the sky in shades of gold and lavender, Nyla and Rain sat together on a blanket under the magnolia tree, pointing at stars. "That one's for your mama," Nyla whispered. "I think she can see you smiling now." Rain rested his head against her shoulder, his breathing slow and steady, and for the first time since tragedy tore his world apart, he fell asleep without trembling. Inside the house, Sebastian stood by the window, watching them in silence. In that fragile stillness, he understood something no fortune had ever taught him, that healing didn't always arrive through doctors or wealth, but sometimes with the quiet grace of a child who simply refused to let someone be alone. The following morning broke with a tender hush, sunlight spilling through gauzy curtains, as if afraid to disturb the peace that had settled overnight. Nyla awoke before anyone else, stretching slowly beneath the soft quilt before tiptoeing to the balcony. Outside, the garden shimmered with dew, and the air smelled faintly of magnolia and rain. Down below, she spotted Rain sitting cross-legged on a blanket, Mr. Cloudy tucked beneath his arm, gazing up at the brightening sky. Smiling, she dressed quickly and slipped downstairs, her bare feet whispering across the marble floors. No one stopped her. The staff had already learned that the little girl was no ordinary guest. When she reached the garden, Rain looked up, his face brightening instantly. "Morning, Rain," she said softly, settling beside him on the blanket. He held up the teddy bear as if presenting proof of something sacred. "He watched the stars with me," he whispered, and Nyla's breath caught. His words were clear now, gentle but certain. "She sang," he added after a pause, eyes drifting skyward. "Mama sang in my dream." Nyla swallowed hard. "Then she must be proud of you." The boy nodded, and for a long moment they sat in silence, their world small and safe. A few minutes later, footsteps approached across the grass. Sebastian appeared, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater instead of the sharp suits that usually served as his armor. He paused when he saw them together and smiled, a weary, grateful smile that reached all the way to his eyes. "You two have been up early," he said, lowering himself onto the blanket beside them. "We were talking to the stars," Nyla replied. Sebastian looked at her, then at his son. "May I join?" Rain nodded without hesitation, shifting closer to make room. "Thank you," Sebastian said softly. He studied the children for a moment, his gaze lingering on Nyla's patient calm. "You've changed him," he said finally, voice thick. "And you've changed me." Nyla shrugged, tracing patterns on the blanket. "Sometimes people just need someone to stay." Sebastian's throat tightened at the truth in her words. He thought of all the therapists, all the schools, all the people who tried to fix his son by force, when all he'd really needed was presence. He looked at her again and said, "I want to do something that lasts for you, for him, and for other kids like you both. Something that doesn't disappear when the news stops talking about it." "Like what?" Nyla asked. "You'll see," he said. Later that morning, The three of them climbed into a modest black sedan, no bodyguards, no press, and drove across town toward Nyla's neighborhood. The farther they went, the shinier skyline gave way to cracked sidewalks, peeling paint, and sun-bleached fences. The air felt heavier, realer. When they pulled up to a small house with faded blue shutters and flower pots made from old buckets, Evelyn was already on the porch. "It ain't much," she said, folding her arms, "but it's ours." Sebastian nodded reverently. "And it's beautiful because you're in it." Inside, the home smelled of coffee, lavender, and old books. Photographs lined the walls, smiling faces, church gatherings, birthdays, and the living room couch sagged with the comfort of use. Sebastian sat carefully while Nyla and Rain disappeared into the girls' room, giggling over picture books and stickers. In the kitchen, Evelyn stirred a pot of tea, watching him from the corner of her eye. "You've got something on your mind," she said. "Yes, ma'am," he replied. "I want to help, but not just with money. I want to build something real. A place for kids who've been overlooked, for families like yours, for children like my son." Evelyn set the spoon down slowly. "A place, a foundation," he said. "Free tutoring, art therapy, counseling, a space where no child feels forgotten. I'd like to name it after Nyla." She blinked. "After my granddaughter?" She reminded me that generosity isn't measured by wealth, but by heart. The world needs to remember that. Evelyn studied him for a long while, then smiled faintly. "You serious?" "Completely." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe the Lord really did send her your way." Upstairs, Nyla was showing Rain her sticker chart. "Each star means I did something good, like read a book or help Grandma fold laundry." Rain's eyes lit up. "I want stars too." "Then you gotta earn them," she teased. He giggled, a sound so pure it made Evelyn pause in the doorway. That evening, as the sedan carried them back to the estate, Nyla leaned against the window, watching the city blur by. Rain sat beside her, Mr. Cloudy clutched to his chest with one of her gold star stickers now pressed to its fuzzy paw. From the front seat, Sebastian glanced back. "You doing okay, Nyla?" She nodded sleepily. "Just thinking." "About what?" "Why some people have everything and some people have nothing," she murmured. "But when you share a little, everybody feels full." Sebastian's hands tightened on the wheel. He couldn't speak. Her words hung in the quiet car like a benediction. That night, long after the children had fallen asleep, he sat at his desk and began drafting the founding letter for the Nyla Grace Foundation, a promise that her kindness would echo far beyond the walls of his home. And in the East Wing, 2 children slept beneath a ceiling painted with glow-in-the-dark stars, their laughter destined to become the light guiding countless others out of loneliness. The weeks that followed passed like a sunrise that refused to stop brightening, and what had begun as a quiet promise over breakfast beneath a magnolia tree soon grew into something vast enough to change the shape of hearts across the city. Within a month, architects, teachers, and child counselors gathered at the Hale Estate to plan the first campus of the Nyla Grace Foundation, a space that would welcome children who needed care, safety, or simply someone to stay beside them. Nyla became its smallest and most opinionated designer, spending her afternoons sprawled on a library floor with colored pencils and sketchbooks, drawing what she believed every child deserved. A reading tree with hollow branches where kids could hide and dream, a calm room painted blue for when tears needed privacy, and a window seat that looked out the clouds because sometimes you just need to remember the sky still belongs to you. Rain sat nearby during every meeting, building block towers while his father and the architect discussed budgets and blueprints, occasionally glancing up to watch Nyla's sketches come alive. Sebastian listened more than he spoke, humbled by how easily wisdom flowed from an 8-year-old who had nothing yet gave everything. Evelyn, who refused to be treated like a guest, joined the planning sessions too, sipping her coffee while reminding the room that kids don't heal in places that feel like hospitals. They heal in places that smell like home. Slowly, the sterile outlines of corporate facilities softened into the heartbeat of a neighborhood center, warm, colorful, alive. One morning, a journalist named Mara Lowe arrived, a sharp, compassionate woman from Atlanta People Weekly who had written stories about politics, poverty, and privilege, but never one quite like this. She found Nyla and Rain in a sunlit corner of the house, painting clouds on cardboard with glitter and glue. What are you two making? She asked, crouching down. A dream sky, Nyla answered proudly. It's for the kids who'll come to the foundation. If they ever feel sad, they can look up and know someone's watching out for them. Mara paused, heart caught off guard by the simplicity of that truth. And you, Rain? She asked gently. He pointed to a golden star sticker in the corner. That one's for my mom, he whispered. The journalist turned off her recorder without thinking. Some stories, she realized, didn't need polish. They needed silence. That evening, she interviewed Sebastian, who spoke not about money or image, but about redemption. I spent years chasing the illusion of control, he said. But it took a little girl with a paper bag lunch to teach me what real wealth looks like. Mara's article hit newsstands the following week, and by sunrise, the world knew the story of the girl who gave half a sandwich and healed a broken family. The words rippled across continents, translated into languages Nyla couldn't even pronounce. Donations flooded in. Some large, some just crumpled bills from children who'd read her story and mailed what little they could. But Nyla knew none of this. She was too busy helping Rain build a fort out of couch cushions in the living room, giggling until Evelyn told them to settle down before they broke something expensive. That night, Mara's headline spread across every screen. She fed a hungry boy and awoke a sleeping world. And under it, a line that would soon be etched into the entrance of every foundation campus. She gave half a meal and her whole heart. In the Hale mansion, Nyla fell asleep on the couch beside Rain. Mr. Cloudy tucked safely between them, unaware that while she dreamed, her kindness was becoming the seed of a movement that would one day teach thousands of children that love, when shared, multiplies, not divides. By the time the story had circled the nation, its echoes had reached beyond headlines and hashtags, breathing life into living rooms, classrooms, and hearts that had long forgotten what compassion looked like in its purest form. Letters poured into the Hale estate, some written on crisp stationery, others on notebook paper with crayon drawings in the corners. A mother in Detroit wrote that her autistic son smiled for the first time in months after hearing Nyla's story. A teacher in Nairobi shared how her students collected sandwiches to give to hungry children in their city. And in the heart of Atlanta, construction crews began breaking ground on the first Nyla Grace Foundation campus, its fences draped with banners that read, "Building Hope Here." Nyla didn't understand the noise her kindness had made. She only saw more people coming together, more laughter echoing where silence used to live. But Sebastian understood. He watched as the small act that had restored his son now began to restore communities fractured by neglect and fear. Evelyn kept him grounded, often reminding him that the work had to start with humility. You can't fix the world by painting over cracks, she'd tell him. You fix it by listening to the folks who live with them every day. He took her advice to heart when reporters came asking for statements. He stepped back and let Nyla's truth speak louder than any PR line could. Love changes things when it refuses to walk away. Then came the invitation that would lift Nyla's name into history. It arrived on a morning painted in soft sunlight, the envelope thick, sealed with the emblem of the U.S. Department of Education. Inside, golden script shimmered across cream paper. The Secretary of Education cordially invites Miss Nyla Grace Carter to deliver the keynote address at the National Children's Equity Summit in Washington, D.C. She will be the youngest speaker in the event's history. Evelyn read the words twice, her mouth open, before whispering, "Lord above, they want my baby to talk to the whole country." Nyla blinked in disbelief. "But I'm just 8, she said. "Big hearts don't come with age," Evelyn replied. Within a week, preparations were underway. Tailors arrived with simple dresses. Speech coaches offered help, and cameras lingered outside the mansion gates. Through it all, Nyla remained calm in the way only a child with true purpose can be. "I'll just tell the truth," she said whenever someone asked what she'd say. "That's all I know how to do." The morning of the summit, the Capitol glowed beneath winter light. Inside the grand auditorium, rows of politicians, educators, journalists, and community leaders filled the seats, their murmurs rising like distant waves. Behind the curtain, Nyla stood in a navy blue dress with sunflower buttons, a ribbon tied neatly in her hair. Sebastian knelt beside her, his hands trembling more than hers. "You nervous?" she asked. "Terrified," he admitted with a laugh. I've spoken in rooms full of billionaires and never felt like this. She grinned. Then I'll talk for both of us. The announcer's voice echoed to the hall. Please welcome Miss Nyla Grace Carter. The lights brightened. She stepped forward, small and steady, to a podium that seemed to tower over her. She took a deep breath and began, her voice clear but tender. Hi, my name's Nyla, she said. A few months ago, I met a boy named Rain. He was hungry, so I gave him half my sandwich. A soft ripple of laughter moved through the audience. He didn't talk much. He didn't smile. But he sat with me, and I sat with him. I didn't know who he was or what he'd lost. I just knew he looked lonely, and I know how that feels. The room fell silent. People think you have to be big to help someone, or rich or famous. But I'm not any of those things. I just had a sandwich in time, and I gave both. And now Mr. Hale, Rain's dad, is helping build a place for other kids like him, and like me, so nobody feels invisible again. Her small hands rested on the edge of the podium as she looked out over hundreds of faces. You don't have to change the whole world, she said softly. You just have to care about the part you can touch. For a heartbeat, there was no sound. Then applause erupted, loud, thunderous, endless. People stood, tears streaming, clapping until their hands ached. Backstage, Sebastian caught Nyla in his arms, whispering, You did it. She smiled against his shoulder. I didn't say anything fancy. You didn't have to, he said. You said the truth. Evelyn joined them, her own eyes glistening. That was the Lord speaking through you, child. Rain, seated in the front row with Mr. Cloudy on his lap, waved shyly before running into her arms. That night, news outlets across the country ran one headline above all others. Little girl, big heart. How one act of kindness rewrote what hope looks like. Back in Atlanta, the photos of Nyla behind the podium joined the framed memories on Evelyn's living room wall, right beside one of Rain handing her back Mr. Cloudy with a proud smile. And as the wind rustled the magnolia trees outside the Hale estate, the city seemed to whisper her message through its streets. Kindness doesn't need an audience. It just needs a moment. Winter melted into spring, and there came a hum of new beginnings that stretched far beyond the white marble gates of the Hale estate. The Nyla Grace Foundation became more than a project. It became a heartbeat, pulsing through communities that had once been forgotten. The city campus stood tall in the heart of Atlanta's South Side, painted in warm yellows and deep blues, sunlight pouring through wide windows, laughter spilling from classrooms. On opening day, children rushed to the doors in hand-me-down coats and wide smiles, greeted not by security guards or paperwork, but by murals of hope, paintings of Nyla and Rain sitting beneath a giant tree, words written in gold above them. No one is too small to make someone feel seen. Nyla watched from the steps, her small hands clutching a ribbon she'd soon be asked to cut, while Evelyn stood proudly beside her in her Sunday pearls and a hat that made her look like royalty. Cameras flashed, but Nyla hardly noticed. She was too busy staring at Rain, who was laughing now, freely, loudly, the kind of laughter that filled empty spaces and made the world seem gentle again. Sebastian stood behind them, quiet, overwhelmed. When it came time for Nyla to speak, she simply said, This place belongs to every child who ever felt invisible. You're home now. Weeks passed, and the campus bloomed with life. Story time under trees, art classes filled with spilled paint and bright dreams, counselors who listened instead of lectured. Rain volunteered daily, helping smaller kids read, his once muted voice now soft but steady. Evelyn became the building's soul, greeting every visitor with tea and truth. And Sebastian, no longer a man defined by loss, spent his mornings in meetings and his evenings walking the halls, stopping often to watch the children play, knowing that for the first time in his life, his wealth was building something that mattered. Then came the whispers, the criticism that always follows light. Articles appeared questioning whether a billionaire's name belonged on a building in a poor black neighborhood. Activists called the foundation a publicity stunt. Reporters chased tension instead of truth. One morning, Evelyn found Sebastian at the kitchen table, the newspaper folded neatly beside untouched coffee. You look like a man who swallowed a storm, she said. He sighed, rubbing his temples. They're calling it performative charity. She chuckled softly. Let him talk. Seeds don't argue with the wind, they just grow. But Nyla noticed the tension too. Outside the city campus one afternoon, she saw protesters holding signs. No more billionaire saviors. This ain't your story to sell. Her heart ached, not with anger, but with confusion. That evening, she stood in the Foundation's empty library, staring at the mural of herself and Rain. Did we do something wrong? She asked quietly. Rain shook his head. We just started something big, he said. The next day, Nyla went to Sebastian's office, her small frame dwarfed by the desk. We should listen to them, she said. All of them. The people who are mad, the people who are scared. Everybody. Grandma says when people yell, it's just because they don't feel heard. Sebastian blinked, stunned by her clarity. You want a meeting? No, she said. A circle, where nobody's louder than anybody else. A week later, flyers went up across the neighborhood. Community Listening Night, hosted by the Nyla Grace Foundation. When the evening came, the school gym filled with neighbors, parents, teachers, and skeptics alike. There were no microphones, no podiums, just folding chairs in a circle. Nyla sat cross-legged beside Evelyn and Rain, her hands folded in her lap. We're here to listen, she began softly. Not to fix or to fight, just to listen. And one by one, people spoke. A mother voiced fear that the new center would erase her daycare. A teacher said schools needed books, not just therapy rooms. A young man admitted he'd never trusted rich folks because they always left. Sebastian took notes, his head bowed, humility replacing habit. When the room grew quiet, Nyla stood again. We can't erase what came before, she said, her voice steady. But we can decide what comes next. Maybe we don't need one person fixing things. We need everyone holding a piece of it. The room fell silent. Then slowly, applause began, not loud, not performative, but warm, genuine, healing. After the meeting, as they walked home beneath the streetlights, Evelyn slipped her arm around Nyla's shoulders. You just did what no press release could, she whispered. You turned noise into understanding. Nyla smiled faintly. Do you think they'll trust us now? Evelyn looked up at the stars. Some will, some won't. But the ones who listen, that's where change starts. Sebastian walked beside them, his steps unhurried, his heart finally still. She's right, he said quietly. The foundation doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to everyone who believes. It always did, Evelyn replied. You just didn't know how to see it. And as the city light shimmered against the night sky, Nyla looked down at her small hand, her grandmother's, and realized that kindness, once shared, doesn't fade. It echoes, reshaping every silence. It touches into something that sounds like hope. Spring ripened into summer, and with each sunrise, the Nyla Grace Foundation grew into more than buildings. It became a rhythm of belonging woven into the city's heartbeat. The once empty lot now pulsed with color. Murals painted by local artists, laughter tumbling out of classrooms, the scent of chalk dust and fresh-cut grass mingling with the hum of possibility. Children who had once been silent now filled the air with stories, songs, and small triumphs. Nyla, still only 8 but wise beyond her years, had somehow become the soul of it all. She spent her mornings reading with toddlers, her afternoons in the art room helping shy hands hold paintbrushes, and her evenings sitting under the magnolia tree where it had all begun, telling Rain about her dreams for the next campus. One evening, as golden light spilled across the courtyard, Sebastian called a meeting inside the main hall, a gathering unlike any other. Around the long wooden table sat an unlikely circle. Judge Amina Monroe, elegant and sharp-eyed, 2 city educators with notebooks full of plans, Evelyn Carter, firm but kind. At the far end, Nyla herself, swinging her legs from a chair too tall for her, but wearing the calm of someone who knew she belonged. The purpose of the meeting was clear. Turn the foundation from a single miracle into a sustainable movement. Judge Monroe began with her measured voice. The foundation's work is extraordinary, but we need permanence. Partnerships with schools, with family courts, with community leaders. If we want long-term change, it must live beyond this room. One of the educators nodded. We're ready to help build a curriculum for emotional literacy and mentorship, something modeled after Nyla's empathy. Evelyn chuckled. You can't teach heart, but you can remind people it still beats. Laughter rippled lightly through the room. But not everyone was smiling. A PR consultant at the far end adjusted her glasses and said, we should be strategic about how we present the foundation. The story is powerful, but we must control the narrative. Make Nyla the face of the modern American dream. It's inspirational marketing. The warmth in the air cooled instantly. Evelyn's fork paused midair. Say that again, she asked. The woman hesitated. We need to shape the message, something that appeals to donors. Evelyn's voice hardened. You talking about shaping my granddaughter like she's a slogan? The room fell silent. Nyla's small voice broke through the tension. I don't want to be shaped, she said quietly. I just want to stay me. Sebastian exhaled slowly, his expression softening with pride. Then that's the message, he said. We don't tell a story about perfection. We tell one about people who care. Judge Monroe nodded. To real stories, then, to staying human. Evelyn lifted her glass of water. To not being shaped. Everyone followed, the clink of glasses sealing something sacred. Later that night, long after the grown-ups had gone, Nyla wandered onto the balcony overlooking the garden. The air was thick with crickets and honeysuckle, the stars winking through the dark. Sebastian joined her, setting 2 mugs of cocoa on the railing. That was a lot for one day, he said. You okay? I think so, Nyla answered. Those people talk funny. Like their words are too big for what they mean. He laughed softly. That's most adults, I'm afraid. She turned toward him, eyes glowing in the moonlight. Do you think they'll really listen to us? He nodded. They already are, Nyla, even the ones who don't know it yet. She thought for a moment, then said, when I grow up, I don't want to be just a helper. I want to be the person who makes the rules, the good kind. You want to be in charge, he teased. She shook her head. I want to make sure the right people are. He smiled, quiet and full of awe. If I could take you to every boardroom in America, I would. You're going to need more than boardrooms, she said with a grin. You'll need more kids who stay. He nodded, and more grown-ups who listen. That night, Evelyn found her granddaughter sitting cross-legged on her bed, scribbling in her notebook. What you writing now? She asked. A list, Nyla replied. Of people I want to meet. Kids like Rain, grown-ups like you, people with soft eyes and big hearts. Evelyn smiled, brushing her braids gently. That's a good list. Nyla looked down at her paper and whispered, I just don't want this to be a story that ends when I grow up. Evelyn sat beside her, the mattress sinking softly beneath their weight. Then don't let it, she said. You keep writing it every day. Outside, a soft wind moved through the magnolia branches, carrying laughter from the courtyard below. Rain's laughter, bright and boundless. And as the stars blinked overhead, Nyla leaned against her grandmother and whispered, Then that's what I'll do. I'll keep it going. And in that quiet promise, somewhere between a dream and a vow, the next chapter of kindness began to write itself. It was a warm, silver morning when the first city campus of the Nyla Grace Foundation officially opened its doors to the public, a former abandoned school transformed into a beacon of color, life, and love in the heart of Atlanta. The air smelled faintly of new paint and magnolia blossoms from the trees Evelyn had insisted they plant by the gate. Inside, sunlight streamed through tall windows onto floors covered with rugs instead of tiles, bean bags shaped like turtles, shelves stacked with storybooks, and walls painted in soft hues that felt more like hugs and architecture. In the main library hung a mural that had already begun to attract visitors from across the city. 2 children, a black girl and a fair-haired boy, sitting beneath a giant painted tree. Beneath them, in looping gold letters, it read, No one is too small to make someone feel seen. Nyla stood there that morning, now 8 going on 9, clutching a clipboard nearly as big as her torso, reviewing notes with the seriousness of a grown-up. We need extra blankets in every reading room, she said firmly, and cocoa mix in the kitchen. Some kids don't talk till they're warm. The staff smiled, writing down her words as if receiving divine instructions. She didn't know it, but they'd already started calling her Miss Nyla, the hard place. That afternoon, while Rain worked with a small group of children tracing alphabet letters, a boy appeared at the glass doors of the library. He was thin, soaked from the rain, his hood pulled low over his face. He didn't knock, didn't move, just watched quietly through the window as laughter and color bloomed inside. Nyla noticed him first. She set down her book and walked over, opening the door a crack. "Hey," she said softly. "You okay?" The boy didn't answer, his shoulders tense, his shoes dripping puddles on the steps. "You want to come in? It's warm. We've got snacks and books." Still no reply. "That's okay," she said kindly. "I don't ask questions unless you want me to." Something in her calm made him look up. His eyes were dark, tired, full of storms that had lasted too long. "I'm Jalen," he murmured finally. "Nice to meet you, Jalen," she said with a smile. "You can sit by the turtle pillow if you want." He hesitated, then stepped inside. She handed him a dry blanket and a juice box, sitting beside him without crowding his silence. For nearly half an hour, they just existed together. The hum of soft jazz from a speaker, the faint rain outside, the warmth between them unspoken. Eventually, Jalen picked up a book, Where the Wild Things Are, and began to flip through it slowly. Nyla smiled. "That one's good. My grandma used to do the monster voices." He didn't smile, but he didn't look away either. Later, Evelyn arrived with Rain for his afternoon reading group. The moment Rain saw Jalen, he ran over, offering a second juice box. "He's quiet, too," Nyla whispered to the boy. "But he's the bravest person I know." Jalen accepted the drink wordlessly. That evening, while the children built puzzles and laughter filled the halls, Sebastian stood on the second-floor balcony, looking down at the world they had built, this living, breathing testament to a child's kindness. When Nyla found him, she tugged his sleeve. "We need more socks," she said seriously. "Some kids' feet get cold when they read." He chuckled, writing it down. "And we should keep them in every room," she added, "just in case someone comes in from rain." "Someone like Jalen?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah, he's had a storm in his bones." "And you think you can help him?" "Not alone," she said softly, "but I can stay till it passes." Weeks went by, and Jalen became a quiet fixture in the Foundation's library. He never talked much, but he returned every day, sitting in the same corner, reading the same books. One afternoon, when Nyla handed him a grilled cheese sandwich, he whispered, "Thank you." It was the first time anyone had heard his voice. By the end of the month, he began helping Rain and the other kids paint murals on the wall. One morning, he brought Nyla a drawing, the reading nook, the turtle pillow, and 3 figures, himself, Nyla, and Rain, smiling beneath a painted sky. "You drew this?" she asked. He nodded shyly. "You're the first person who didn't ask why I don't talk," he said quietly. "You just waited." "That's easy," she replied. "I already knew. You were just waiting to see if it was safe." That night, as the city lights blinked through the rain, Evelyn made cornbread and sweet tea for the small group who stayed late. Nyla sat at the table, her hands sticky with paint, Jalen at her side, Rain across from her, and Sebastian and Evelyn talking softly by the stove. "You keep collecting storms, don't you?" Evelyn teased gently. "These kids with thunder in their hearts." Nyla grinned. "Grandma, maybe that means I'll always know when to bring an umbrella." Evelyn laughed, shaking her head. "You're going to change this world one quiet day at a time." And outside, the rain softened to a whisper against the windows, the street lamps casting halos of light across the wet pavement. Across from Foundation, the old metal bench that Jalen had once sat on stood empty now, glistening in the drizzle. The storms had found a place to rest, and inside those walls, surrounded by warmth, kindness, and cocoa, the children who had once been invisible learned how to be seen again. Autumn settled gently over Atlanta, the air golden and cool, the trees lining the city streets, shedding leaves that spun like confetti in the breeze. The Nyla Grace Foundation campus glowed beneath the changing sky, its windows warm, its halls alive with laughter, crayons, and the sound of children learning to trust the world again. Every day brought a new small miracle, a shy child finding words, a teen mentoring another, Evelyn humming gospel tunes as she served cocoa in the kitchen. Nyla had become the symbol of it all. Not a figure on posters or a face for donors, but a living, breathing reminder of what love could build when it stayed. Yet she never felt like anything more than herself. A girl who had shared her lunch with Stranger Point one crisp Friday morning. As the children drew pictures of pumpkins and stars, a letter arrived in the mailroom. Heavy paper, golden seal, addressed in elegant script to Miss Nyla Grace Carter and family. Evelyn opened at the breakfast table, while Nyla arranged fruit slices into smiley faces for Rain and Jalen. "Looks like somebody important wants to talk to you again," Evelyn murmured, her eyes scanning the page. Nyla looked up, curious. "Who this time?" "The Atlanta City Forum," Evelyn said with a soft laugh of disbelief. "They want you to give the keynote speech. Themes, voices for the future. Says right here you've been nominated by a community panel to represent youth leadership and civic change." Nyla's fork dropped. "Me?" Sebastian, reading over Evelyn's shoulder, nodded slowly. "It's real, and it's time." Rain grinned, handing her Mr. Cloudy as if to lend her courage. "He says you'll do great," he whispered. The forum day arrived under a pale blue sky. The city's grand municipal auditorium buzzed with chatter, filled with educators, mayors, artists, and dreamers. Outside, banners waved, Voices of the Future, featuring Nyla Grace Carter. Backstage, she stood in a simple yellow dress, her braids tied with white ribbons. Evelyn adjusted her collar, while Rain clutched a teddy bear from the front row, his expression fierce with pride. "Just breathe, baby," Evelyn whispered. "You already know what to say." When the announcer called her name, the lights flared bright, and the crowd fell silent. Nyla stepped forward, her small frame dwarfed by the stage, her heart steady. "Hi," she began softly, her voice carrying through the hall. "My name's Nyla. A while ago, I met a boy named Rain sitting outside a bakery. He was hungry, so I gave him half my sandwich. I didn't know he was the son of a billionaire. I didn't know anyone was looking for him. I just knew he looked lonely, and I know how that feels." A murmur rippled through the audience. "Since then," she continued, "we've built a place where kids can come and feel safe. We don't ask questions first. We listen, because sometimes the only thing people need is to be seen." She paused, her eyes sweeping over hundreds of faces. "I'm not here because I'm special. I'm here because kindness is. It's not something you buy or teach. It's something you give, even when you think it's too small to matter. But every time you give, you start a chain that keeps going." When she finished, the room was silent for a breath, then rose into applause so thunderous it shook the chandeliers. Evelyn wept openly. Sebastian wiped his eyes, and Rain stood on his chair cheering. After the ceremony, reporters surrounded her, but Nyla only said one sentence before escaping to the lobby where the children from the foundation waited. "The real heroes are the ones who keep showing up." That night, as the city lights blinked outside the mansion, the newspaper headlines told her story again, the girl who fed one child and taught a city to listen. But inside, around Evelyn's kitchen table, it was quiet. Just family, just laughter, just home. Years later, the world would still speak her name. The foundation would grow, branches across states, campuses in small towns, a scholarship program for young caretakers. Rain would become a teacher at the very place that once healed him. Jalen would lead the art therapy wing. Evelyn's photograph would hang in the main hallway with her favorite quote beneath it. "Love isn't loud. It lasts." And Nyla? She would grow up, yes, but she would never outgrow what started it all. Every morning, she walked to the foundation's glass doors, waved to the children, and whispered her quiet promise. "I'm still here." And so she was. The girl who gave half a sandwich and her whole heart had built a legacy that needed no monuments, because it lived in every hand that reached out, every voice that spoke softly, and every small act of courage that turned loneliness into light.